Yes, and now we'll go to the next presenter. It's Dr. Fabio Marchese from Red Sea Research Center here at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology, and he will be talking about deep benthic environments, an endless challenge for marine robotics.
Your presentation.
The third one. And after this presentation, we will have a short coffee break until the next one.
Okay.
Let's welcome Dr. Marchese.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation, Professor Ferron, Professor Shinkyu. Yes, I am. Actually, my talk will be a little bit less technical. I am an heavy, in all the sense, user of marine robotics at sea, and that's basically based on my experience with on using robotics in deep and in deep sea environment. So just a brief introduction about me. I came from the Mediterranean Sea because I took my PhD in Milano Bicocca University. I'm a geologist. My expertise is seafloor mapping. So any kind of feature that we can see at sea generally, it is interesting for mapping. That could be for any kind of geological reason. We can map it through big vessel, small vessel, and identify them is one of the main topic of my research. And actually, I just put it here, these images. These are corals in the Mediterranean, but they are deep sea coral. They are completely alive. They are white, but they are alive. They are called cold water corals, and they live in the deep sea. So I start everything from here, but then I was so lucky to move in KAUST and work in the Red Sea. And even here, start working with a small oceanographic vessel to big vessel. I was lucky enough to be on board of the first ocean explorer expedition here in the Red Sea and work with the cutting edge tool and technologies for mapping, for seafloor mapping. So this is my background, because I would like to talk to you about today the use that we are doing of robotics and in general technology for that working at sea for the benthic habitat mapping. So basically, benthic habitat mapping, what I mean is a kind of part of the field of seafloor mapping. So we are plotting the distribution at the extension of habitats on a chart. This is a kind of the definition from the MESH project guide in Europe. But basically, what we need to implement and to create benthic habitat maps. So when we are talking about habitat, immediately people are starting, especially geologists like me, they start immediately talking about, okay, that's just biota. It's not only biota, it's not only biology. We have to consider the environment that is around the actually benthic biota. So we are including geology because we need to understand what is the seafloor environment that is gonna host our benthic, our biota layer. We need to understand what is the water parameter, how are the water parameters that are basically the house that are surrounding our biota layer. So we need to understand how much is temperature, salinity, oxygen concentration, and so on. We need, of course, to understand the biology because we need to identify organisms. And of course, the technology, because we are working at sea and especially in the deep sea, is one of the main part of the benthic habitat mapping. So all these kind of fields of science are included in the benthic habitat mapping, and the results that are coming from here, they are generally used from stakeholder government to produce habitat maps, and there are basically the main tool for maritime spatial planning and building marine protected areas. There are two main kind of data set that we are using in Benthic habitat mapping. And so that is the first one is the remote sensing, that which will include bathymetry, backscatter, orthomosaic of the seafloor, physical and chemical parameter of the seafloor, any kind of continuous layer that we can use as a background for creating maps. Plus, we are going to insert also the second type of layer, that is the sampling or the ground truthing, because with only the first type of layer, we cannot understand what is on the seafloor. So to explore it better and to put actually the location of our biota, we need to get the second type of data set. And this will include videos and picture of the seabed. They will include, of course, samples. And since we are working at sea, and we have to include biological, geological, and of course, oceanographic samples. So where technology and robotics can help? Actually, in both. I will just put here an example of what my laboratory is doing now here in the Red Sea at KAUST. I am part of the Habitat and Benthic Biodiversity Lab in the Red Sea Research Center. And actually, we have two lines of research here. The first one is biodiversity and benthic organism. So, of the benthic organisms. So we are going to use any kind of technology, tools, any kind of support that will help us to sample the seafloor. So we're going to talk about, we're going to sample the seafloor, sample any kind of organism, but also rocks, sediments. We are going to get some in situ images, and then some other analyses in the lab, like optical microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, and genetic and genomic analysis. The second line of research of my lab actually is the seafloor and habitat mapping and modeling, and that's the research line that I will work in. We are generally use remote sensing to create a map of the seafloor, and we are gonna use the ground truthing coming from both ROV video transect or any kind of video transect. Actually, it could be also towed camera. And of course, we are going to integrate the result from the first research line of the lab, and we are going to create a habitat map of our seafloor. And this is an example of the first attempt here in front of KAUST. So one of the main, let me say, equipment that we are generally use is the ROVs, the remote operation vehicle. How we use it for habitat mapping, the typical dive is finding a correct location using the multi-beam bathymetry. And then after scanning with a multi-beam, we are able to decide where is the best location to conduct our benthic transit. Then once the ROV is in the water, we are gonna keep, of course, because our ROV is generally related to position. So we have position depth every second or every interval of seconds. It could be from 1 to 10 seconds. We get position, and while the ROV is working and it's gonna take videos of the seafloor, we are gonna classify our track. And we are gonna classify not only by the video analysis, but also considering that the samples that the ROV is gonna collect during the same track. So here is the best, actually, based on my experience. I was lucky enough to be on board of this expedition. This is a world-class ROV from OceanX, actually. And it was one of the best multi-purpose ROV that we can use. We have basically whatever sensor and tools to collect from remote sensing data to the physical samples. If I go for a step back, I will move to the remote sensing layers that we are, the remote sensing dataset that we are generally using. And here is an example of the classic multi-beam bathymetry. So as a user, especially as a geologist, we would like to increase always the resolution of our map. This is a digital three-dimensional model of classic multi-beam bathymetry, sounder bathymetry. It's a very high resolution, but it's still 30, every cell of this model is 30 meter by 30 meter cell. So high resolution for acoustic, but not so high compared to other equipment. For example, one of the equipment that you already see in the previous presentation, I think is coming in the same way. This is coming from the shallow water Benthic habitat mapping. This is a starter from motion model, so it's a creation of three-dimensional model based on the collection of pictures. And the resolution here is completely different. We are talking about centimeter level resolution, and that is done in scuba diving. The main issue here is, okay, but if I want to bring this kind of model in the deep, actually, we don't have a really reliable technology that is able to do that. Why? Because this kind of tools generally require a lot of interaction between the diver and the seafloor. We have to deploy some ground control point. We have to scale the model. There's a lot of things that we have to do to create this kind of high resolution model. But the result is, the difference is crazy. Here, for example, we have, for this exactly the same area, we did this test. We collect a stratiform motion mosaic in the classical way using a diver, and we use an autonomous surface vessel from KAUST to collect the multi-beam dataset, so the acoustic dataset in the same area here. And running through this guy with the maximum resolution possible, so very slow, paying a maximum ping rate, and more or less the overlap area is this one, and the difference between the 2 point clouds is this one is made by almost 230 million points, and this one is 2.3. So the difference in resolution is huge. That's why one of our dream should be bringing this kind of technology in the deep, to not scan the entire deep sea, because it will be useless in that case. But for a particular feature of interest, it will be amazing to have this kind of technology. Here, as a second requirement that we are generally asking for is remote controlled surveys and autonomous data collection. This is a kind of situation that is already done because we have kind of tools that are they are already available in the market, such as ASV, like this one, to collect data set in the super shallow water, and AUV here to get the same resolution in the deep compared to the shallow. Here we have two areas. This red area here was collected by a multi-beam bathymetry from the boat, and the resolution is 2 meter by 2 meter. Here is the same resolution at 400 meter depth collected by an AUV. So in this case, we get the same resolution. But there is an issue. While we are go down in the deep, so we are moving from 0 to 30 meter, that is shallow, then we are moving to the mesophotic, that is between 30 and 150, and then to the deep. We are increasing the depth, and we are increasing also the dimension of our tool. And because we are increasing the dimension of our tool, as a scientist, we generally ask always to the technician to put even more sensor. That is absolutely fine in the case of an ROV, because it's going to go very slow, and you're going to drive it, the pilot is going to drive it in real time. But if you're talking about autonomous vehicles, and here is an example of the Red Sea, and actually this is in front of KAUST between 30 and 80 meter depth. The topography is super complex. So let's go down here without any kind of pre-survey, an AUV, for example, an autonomous underwater vehicle here doing some line without understanding what we have here. It could be really risky for the vehicle by itself. And this is an example of this, the head of one of those AUV eating the seafloor. So one of our thinking was, okay, this technology is absolutely amazing. I would like to have more, but need to be maybe increase the obstacle avoided system. Talking about the second type of layer that we generally collect, sorry. I was thinking about, I was telling you about first video and picture of the seabed, and samples, biological, geological, and water sample. Independently by the type of vehicle, here we have a submersible, here we have an ROV. But even here, we keep asking for a better resolution. Why? Because for example, for video and picture, highest resolution of the cameras will help our biologists to understand and identify the species of the organism. And you can imagine that with an high resolution camera, the things will be way easier. But still is a manual process. We have to do it frame by frame all along the ROV dives. And in this kind of situation, and I am working with Benthic science, with Benthic biologists, so they are looking at corals. Here we have something like 100 coral in the same picture. It's a mess. So what we try to do, and you already saw it in the previous presentation, I think it's kind of a similar tool, but we try to implement it with using AI. So training, actually, this is a work made with one of our students. She trained the robots basically directly on the ROV dives that we did in the Red Sea and try to get the maximum identification possible of some categories of the benthic biota. It's not easy because also for corals, same corals that look the same, probably they are two different species. So there is also a sort of compromise between which level of identification we want to reach. But the tool is very promising. And since I was talking about the sampling is, we have a bunch of tools now that are available for ROV. Something like, if I think about the manipulator sample box that they can be closed, so we can preserve our samples. The suction sampler is one of the best tools I ever seen to collecting, or for example, samples from an ROV or a subs. Push core Niskin bottle to collect sample exactly in the spot that I want. But still, the sampling operation, if we are thinking about the things that the pilot has to do, we have to consider that he has to go to reach the location, select the correct tools, stabilize the vehicle, then he has to control the manipulator, and depending on the manipulator control, it could be complicated, and then secure the sample. This kind of operation, it will take between 10 and 15 minutes with this kind of, with the huge ROV, and depending on pilot experience. So thinking about that, between biologists and geologists, we are able to reach 30 samples for each dive. The bottom time that we have with the ROV, it becomes really short. So we are able to explore a very small part of the sea. So one of the things that we were thinking about it is, can AI be helpful, even can provide us an help also in solve this kind of situation? One of my dream actually could be pointing there, something at the video, and automatically the underwater vehicle is able to collect it and then put it in the box. So it's just a dream. Maybe it's completely nonsense, but this is a kind of situation that we have to think about it while we are planning an ROV dive. So just to sum up, things that, and I put here final remarks and dreams, because maybe this is not possible, but considering the type of the equipment that we are using, considering small equipment able to be deployed by small vessel and less number of technicians, we will be a good solution for us as scientists. Plus, considering that, of course, if we are working at deep sea, using small vessel and small vehicle, we are more, we risk too much and take more compromise with the weather condition, but still will be a great solution. And maybe also find a way to have the same equipment for different depth rate. Instead of changing the dimension of the ROV, have one ROV that is able to do all the same things from the shallow to the deep will be amazing. Increasing the resolution, centimeter level. Yes, we know that with the acoustic bathymetry, we are now able to go very close to the bottom with underwater vehicle, but still we have the problem of for the autonomous vehicle of the complexity of the seafloor. And in any case, they are not able to reach the same resolution that, for example, the structure for motion methodology is able to reach. Video and picture should be highest resolution at all the depths for both our scientists, our biologists that are able to identify the species, but also even using the AI support, increasing the resolution of the images and having less images blurry or with the motion inside or something like that will be increasing a lot the AI speed to create the robots. And of course, if AI, this is, I already talked about this, sorry. And if AI can help in make the sampling faster for our deep ROV operation, will be amazing. So that's my contribute. I know it was not so much technical, but it's based on the experience of a Navy user of this kind of tools. And if you have any question, here, thank you so much.